Eureka, he found it. Pills, pails, and pads. Shoulder pads, that is. This week's episode was a blast to the past as we learned the various backstories of our Provincetown players, namely Belle, Austin, Patient Zero, and most importantly, the chemist. Even though we got titty bits of her history, I'm still skeptical and think we were told and not shown for reasons that'll come into play later. But for now, let's dig into episode 4, entitled Blood Buffet. 5 years ago, Holden Vaughn is showing off one of the nicer homes on the cock-tip of Cape Cod to one Miss, the chemist, who just left her job at a lab in Providence, Rhode Island. Holden calls her as a chemist immediately, and she says that her leaving was not pleasant, so she's looking for somewhere quiet to settle down. She takes the house, she sets up shop, and we see her start manufacturing her little black beauties. She later pops by the Muse and meets Mickey, whom she offers the pill, but he refuses. She offers him $50 for anyone that he can bring to her to be guinea pigs, and he starts with a guy who can sing. Mickey also encounters self-starting novelist Belle Noire, whose douchebag of a husband only respects her enough to call her by her pseudonym, and introduces her to the chemist. Her husband berates her and her work, but after she takes the pill and gets thirsty writing her first pill-inspired book, she drains him and writes the first 50 pages on her next. The chemist is intrigued by this development, but not surprised, and she later mentions the blood hunger and rage hits everyone the same, but the difference is whether they have talent or not. We see this in the singer from earlier as he starts getting more pasty and losing more hair, to the point of shaving himself bald. He goes to the chemist for more pills, but she refuses, saying that his next dose isn't for 2 days, and also tells him to get a proper coat, boy. Lark furnishes his fancy new getup, and he goes from Buddhist to bloodist as his hunger and rage start to take over during a routine prayer sesh. The chemist tells Patient Zero that talented people get angry and entitled for having such ambition, and the mediocre people get angry and sad at being handed dreams that were too big for them and not having what it takes to fulfill them. He lashes out at her, but she's packing, and he leaves to find food elsewhere. Lark also has some dialogue with Belle about the pills and how they both started taking them, and also helps with her glow-up, along with a new set of chompers. Belle now frequents the Muse, befriending drag queen patio furniture after she lip-syncs for her life, and introduces Austin to the little black beauty.
Fuck it.
They go to have their revenge on the queens that were reading Patty for filth earlier, after a hilarious nod to Eureka's run on Drag Race.
I would do so much better than all these bitches on this show.
With Yuri Crystal Decanter making it out, but not very far before the episode ends on a jump scare. This season's been great, and this episode was no exception. Things that I had hoped to see in the past were how the Muse went from gay bar to the classiest joint in town bar, how Lark came to meet the chemist, and how she perfected the teeth sharpening, and at least one hint of a super famous person leaving the chemist's house as one of our characters was walking up. Getting a final pin on those Tarantino bits would have been great, but they still crammed a lot into this episode, and the season's managing to stay extremely tight in terms of story. Things noticed that may connect elsewhere in American Horror Storyland were the chemist's intro, Belle telling Austin that a hustler in one of her books was involved with the KGB and became head of the CIA, and how Mickey talked about meth and the first high being the best.
Huh. Well, what do you know? That's not a crack hole, that's a rat hole. Rats on crack attack.
And how you spend the rest of the time trying to catch up to it. This seemed to reflect how the pill works when Belle took one and wrote an entire book, but then she only wrote 50 pages after feeding. Next episode is called Winter Kills. The plot says that Ursula devises a sinister plan and that the gardeners write their final act. The way seasons are sometimes structured, I didn't even consider there's sometimes the penultimate episode that wraps up most storylines, with the final episode being an epilogue of sorts. Whoever survives episode 5 could see the final episode of Red Tide focus solely on them, with a lot of trajectory covered in terms of time and actions. We've seen seasons like Hotel and Apocalypse time jump several years in a span of minutes to show how things turned out, so there's a chance that could happen here. But what did you guys think? After seeing the backstory, how do you think the chemist is going to connect to Death Valley? What's Ursula's plan? That devious bitch. Will Alma ever sit first chair in the Philharmonic Orchestra or whatever? We've got 2 episodes left, so subscribe to keep up to date, and I'll catch y'all next time.